Hey YouTube, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Happy Beard Games. Okay, so before I get started on my video, I want to do an extra special thanks to the 11 plus people that are subscribed to me currently on my new channel, Happy Beard Games, on YouTube.com, as well as the 6 people that are subscribed to me currently on my Google Plus page, and I'm not sure how many because it keeps changing pretty quickly, but I do have a Twitter page up now. So check that out if you can. And I have a few people following me on there as well, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that because I'm not really sure about Twitter. I haven't used it very much in the past or even recently. So as you may know, if you're a subscriber to my channel, Happy Beard Games, I'm hard at work on my actual main series for my YouTube channel, which will be like every month or maybe less. I'll have a video about a specific game. It'll be kind of like a little mini movie, review, let's play, game video, all thrown into one big video. Probably about 20 minutes long, maybe half an hour, under half an hour probably. And I'm hard at work on the first episode for that, which will be about my favorite game of all time, which I'm going to start out with, of course, is Super Castlevania IV for the Super NES. And that's why I'm making this video too along the way, because I figured it'll help spark interest and it might be helpful to some people too, and it might even become a new series for me. And what that is going to be, as you may have guessed from the title of this video, I'm going to show some tips and tricks, some hints that I've discovered along the way from my many years playing this game, because I got this game when I was a kid. Yeah, I'm going to show some tips and tricks and hints in this episode, specifically at the very, very end of the game, the final boss fight against Dracula. Now, there is one secret that I'll show in this video. It's pretty a popular secret, pretty well known, but it is a secret that will help save you a lot of time on the final boss. I've noticed that this game, something that I didn't really realize the first few times I played through it, there's definitely patterns to the boss, especially the final boss Dracula. There's specific patterns that go throughout the fight. I think there's like 3 or 4 different changes throughout the fight, with one part that repeats itself twice. And I'll point that out in the video, which I'll show pretty quick. It'll start up here, and I'll show it direct so you know what to do. There's certain patterns that you need to follow in this game to complete the boss. Maybe just to complete the boss at all, but to complete the boss in a pretty easy way. Relatively, it's still going to be tough, and it's still going to take a couple tries. Probably you probably won't get this on your first try, even with these steps followed. But you'll have a better chance at it than just jumping into it fresh. So yeah, let's get into the game, and I'll show you some tips and hints and secrets as well in the final boss fight, Dracula, for Super Castlevania IV. I hope that it'll be very helpful for those viewers, and if you really need help in the game, play this video alongside when you're playing the game yourself, or if you can, maybe write down some of the steps. But I think this video will be most helpful if you're playing along with it. So if you have the game, it's on Super Nintendo, it's on Wii Virtual Console, and Wii U Virtual Console. Those are the easiest ways to find it. But yeah, just grab your controller, and let's get ready to play some Super Castlevania IV together. And I'm going to help you get through the final boss. There is a cheat code that allows you to skip right to the final boss, and that'll give you a... Maybe if you haven't beat the game, you should probably beat the game first, like actually make it all the way to the boss. But if you really want some practice just on the final boss, use the cheat code. You'll make it right before the boss fight and right where the video is going to start out. So let's get going with that video of Super Castlevania IV on the Super Nintendo. Okay, so how I may have mentioned earlier, Super Castlevania IV for the Super Nintendo is an action platforming game. It's 2D, side-scrolling, fun. It's a really great game. I consider it a classic, as it is also my favorite game of all time, which I'll mention a lot, but it really is a good game. Not just for Castlevania fans, but for any fan of either classic games, platforming games like Mario or Mega Man, or maybe Super Metroid, and just games of fans of like horror games as well, because it does have sort of a horror theme to it with Dracula and all. Now, as you may know, if you're a fan of the game or know about the game series of Castlevania, you play once again as Simon Belmont, who is the character from the first and second Castlevania games. Though this is pretty much a remake of the first game, it's not exactly a remake in the gameplay, or the stages at least. It is a remake just in terms of storyline, I guess. The game's story is basically a quest of Simon Belmont to destroy Dracula, but along the way you'll find many power-ups, different items. You'll find hearts, which actually are your ammunition count for whatever item you have equipped for your pickup item, and you also find things like whip power-ups. You use a whip for your attack, and that's a little different. It's different than a sword or something, but it makes it a little more unique. You also use your whip for swinging on to chain hooks, and you can use them to bridge yourself over gaps. Now in this video, we're focusing mainly on the boss fights from Castlevania, specifically the final boss with Dracula. You may find that some of the bosses are easier than others, specifically at the start of the game. The very first boss in the game on stage 1 is the Skeleton Knight and his skeleton mount horse. Right before the boss, there'll be a candle, which in this game you whip candles to sort of break your item. They're sort of like your item blocks from Mario. Sometimes the items are for just points. Sometimes they're weapons that you can equip. Sometimes they're power-ups for your whip, which usually comes out first at the start of the stage. Or if you've died and you don't have all the power-ups, then it'll usually come up faster. Another thing you can find is hearts. Now hearts are your ammunition like I mentioned before, so depending on how many hearts you have, it'll tell you in the top corner, but depending on how many you have, you will you'll be able to throw that many weapons. In addition, you can also find numbers. Now there's a number 2, Roman numeral 2, and Roman numeral 3 that allows you to throw either 2 or 3 of the weapons out at the same time. So for example, if you have the cross weapon, which you throw like a boomerang, you can have 3 of those flying on the screen at one time, which really helps you in battles. Specifically in the Dracula battle, you will be using that. But we're talking about the first boss battle here. Just a quick tip, it's a little bit easier because what you mainly do in the very first boss is, right before you fight, there's some candles, you break it, you get a small meat. Now there's 2 different kinds of meat you can pick up. There's a bigger one that looks like a full-size turkey or something, and then there's like a smaller, like a chicken leg or a turkey leg, and you get that and it'll restore some of your health, appropriately sized for each size of the meat. So you pick up that, or you should always pick that up right before the boss, especially if your health's like significantly low, and probably on your first try it might be pretty low. So it's always a good thing to pick up. Now, the boss battle itself, just to point this out real quick, is pretty simple. If you have the dagger or the throwing knife, you can pretty much stand behind the first block and throw it a few times. It'll usually hit the horse mount in the head a few times, and then he'll fall apart. And then you'll be fighting the knight by himself. You can dodge him because he's pretty slow when he jumps in the air, and then you only have to hit him about 4 or 5 more times with your whip when it's max powered, and then you'll beat him. Now let's move on to another boss that is a little more challenging, and there's a reason why I'm showing these 2 bosses, because the first boss, you kind of have a little bit of strategy. When you first start playing it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to jump in the battle and fight this guy, but it's a little bit better if you stay behind the block and just use a ranged weapon. Now this next boss, before we get to Dracula, there's one boss I want to show, and it is the boss of Stage 3. So the boss of Stage 3, you're climbing up this tower on these steps on the water-themed level right after the cave level. Now, when you get to this boss, you're going to have like 2 or 3 platforms that you can jump on. Most of the time you're going to want to stay in the middle platform because that gives you your best range. You're going to want to have the axe equipped or the knife equipped. I didn't have it at this point, so I actually failed on this recording, but I can do it anyways. It's actually pretty much easier when you have a throwing weapon, because your range is kind of hard to hit those 2 dragon heads. And this one is important to show because it doesn't really take too much strategy because they're moving around so fast and sporadically. The only real strategy here is to have a throwing weapon, which I did not have on this recording. because even if you have a lot of strategy, they're moving around so fast. It's not so much strategy on this one as it is skill of just jumping around and dodging. That's mainly what you're gonna want to do on this fight. I didn't do it so good, but I didn't feel I needed to take time to re-record it. So now let's cut to the chase and move on to what we're really here for: fighting Dracula. Happy Bird Games.
You want to subscribe, you want to subscribe, you want to subscribe, you want to learn the tool really works, da 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 da. You want to subscribe, you want to subscribe, you want to. Mind control.
Thanks for watching.